Welcome to Wesley Impact. I'm Stu Cameron. This is the television program where you can see firsthand the work that we do here at Wesley Mission 24/7, every day of the year. Over the next month, I'd like to do something a little different than our regular format. Since 1884, Wesley Mission has been served by just 10 superintendent ministers like me. I'd like to spend some time reflecting on the work and achievements of my most recent predecessors, Alan Walker, Gordon Moyes and Keith Garner, and then share with you some of the exciting new opportunities we have before us, particularly in the area of media and mission. A weekly Word and Deed TV program has been an initiative that Wesley Mission has invested into for generations, and we're so grateful for our regular viewers, some of who have been watching for decades, along with our broadcast partners like the Nine Network, who made this show possible. But now I feel that, like the pioneering leaders that came before, it's time to step into a new season. I'm looking forward to sharing more about what I think God has before us. But before we do that, it's time for us to take a look back. Today, I'd like to reflect on the rich legacy of Sir Alan Walker. Alan led the work here at Wesley Mission for 20 years, from 1958 to 1978. He was a visionary, an innovator, and someone who was driven to share the good news of the Christian faith with as many people as possible, and in the most relevant and practical ways. He was a prophetic voice in our nation. When television launched in Australia in 1956, before he began his work here at Wesley Mission, Alan Walker launched the television program called I Challenge the Minister. It was a national, primetime program which resonated with the Australian public and drew large audiences. During his early years at Wesley Mission, he continued this television work and added to it in 1963, launching the annual Easter Sunrise Service, a program which is now the longest running annual television show in Australia. This television work added to our already extensive and wide-reaching work in print and on radio, and kept Wesley Mission in the public eye. He stood for social issues that he believed in. He was an advocate for people who could not speak for themselves, and he was an ambassador for the Christian faith. Let's take a look at this short clip from a historical documentary called The Mantle of Christ.
The mission needed to become part of the social conscience of the city, trying to prevent injustice while continuing to care for its victims. A new 20th century American-style evangelism, combining evangelism and social witness from a theological framework, was to be introduced. The catalyst for this radical change was the mission's next superintendent, the Reverend Dr. Alan Walker, who was appointed amid great controversy in 1958.
We may say that Alan Walker and other Christian preachers of this city will be the conscience of Sydney. And we've heard on the very best authority stated tonight that those who in political circles and in social leadership have a care for the future of this city are deeply concerned that there should be more and more leadership, and that men like Alan Walker should be the conscience of this city.
Alan Walker ensured media interest in this new approach and organised an impressive Welcome to Sydney, staged in the Town Hall. The attendance was recorded by the Sydney Morning Herald as 2,500 persons. ABC Television recorded the meeting for later broadcast.
I think perhaps that message is our message tonight, as we say it one to the other. And there's a pledge at its heart, a pledge of prayer. Shall we go forward in that conviction and with that commitment? Plough deeply. Expect much. And let us say to each other and keep it. Am with you daily in prayer.
Sunday by Sunday, evangelism in the Lyceum, with a regular call for commitment to Christ, was to be his first priority. The Easter Mission, inaugurated in 1959, began modestly, but but grew to become the major Christian thrust into Sydney City. Its program ran from Palm Sunday through to Easter Sunday. After 2 years' experience, the mission expanded the outreach in 1961 with the first Easter Day sunrise service at 7 a.m. from the North Ryde Drive-In Theatre. It was telecast live with a repeat in the evening. Under Alan Walker's direction, the mission became a 7-day-a-week church, caring for the isolated and the lonely in the city all day, every day. The Epworth Press, building in Castlereagh Street, became available and was converted into Fellowship House. It provided a hall, club premises and eating facilities for lonely people who would come in off the street. However, there were problems in having this building physically separate from the mission's headquarters. The situation was to change dramatically in an unexpected way. At 6 a.m, 25th of February 1964, Alan Walker was informed at home that the Lyceum Theatre was on fire. The whole theatre was gutted. At breakfast, he was offered the use of the State Theatre for Sunday and Good Friday services free of charge until the Lyceum was rebuilt. By midday, he had a tentative report on the redevelopment, and within 3 months, plans were announced for a 7-storey building facing Pitt Street and a new arcade of shops. Alan Walker saw this as an opportunity to bring the mission's activities under one roof.
From the State Theatre in Market Street, representatives of 11 different denominations marched to the opening of Sydney's newest theatre, the Lyceum. Thousands crowd Pitt Street for the official opening, which is attended by the Reverend Alan Walker and the President of the New South Wales Methodist Conference, the Reverend S.M. Barrett. The Lord Mayor, Alderman Armstrong, is among distinguished guests at the opening. The Lyceum will be used for the pleasant Sunday afternoon meetings and evening worship of the Central Methodist Mission, and during the week by Greater Union Theatres for screening films. The official opening is performed by the State Governor, Sir Roden Cutler, VC. A magnificent new theatre in the heart of Sydney, dedicated as a place of worship and officially opened by the Governor.
The prominent generation of the 60s and early 70s was the youth generation. Walker recognised their need for love, a place to belong, and through unique programs such as Teenage Cabaret, this mission reached out to this formerly neglected social group.
The Central Methodist Mission's Fellowship House in Sydney starts a Saturday night Teenage Cabaret. There's a capacity crowd of 550 teenagers, and the £65,000 community centre is really jumping. He waggles his pelvis better than Elvis. The 3 floors in the cabaret include a chapel above the dance floor, where teenagers and others can go to meditate while the cabaret continues 1 floor below. The Reverend Alan Walker devised the cabaret to give teenagers something to do in a Christian atmosphere. And there's nothing killjoy about this kind of religion. Part of the floor show in real teenage style is provided by the New South Wales rock and roll champions, Mickey DeBono and Judy Cleaver. The youngsters have a great time. And if those tapping feet mean anything, Alan Walker doesn't knock the rock either. Sydney's Teenage Cabaret, designed to keep the younger generation off the street.
He saw the electronic media as the modern equivalent of the open-air service of Taylor's Day. A new half-hour television series called I Challenge the Minister was televised over a period of 7 years.
My first word this afternoon must be that we would give you a word of gratitude for allowing us to come here to your union headquarters and for you to form the audience at this lunchtime period.
His extensive use of the media was unique, and he attracted both praise and criticism for his outspoken views. His prophetic ministry dealt with many of the period's issues: nuclear energy, white Australia policy, apartheid, conscription, and of course the Vietnam War. But other issues such as unemployment, abortion and birth control also took his concerns. As Walker and the mission showed care and concern for the desperate needs of the community, people responded.
Lifeline was born when we discovered the power of the telephone.
Lifeline would soon spread worldwide. Later, Youthline, a youth-to-youth counselling service, would be added. Vision Valley, a new country and leisure centre, Alan always considered was one of his major achievements. During the latter part of Walker's term, Wesley Centre proved to be a difficult financial burden. But in spite of this, the mission didn't hesitate in dealing with the needs of neglected groups within the Sydney community. One new activity was the School for Seniors, which provided an education and activity program, 1 day a week for retired people. The other was the Sydney Singles Society, launched to provide creative activities, fellowships, social life, intellectual life, and a link with the Christian Church for single people of all ages.
If you would like to learn more about Wesley Mission, visit wesleymission.org.au. You can find help in our community services, connect with our church and congregations, discover a volunteer role that suits you, stay up to date on the latest news and information, donate to support our work, and help make a positive difference in your community. You can also connect with us on social media and subscribe to receive the latest news and information about Wesley Mission directly into your inbox. Visit wesleymission.org.au.
Please don't hesitate to be in touch if Wesley Mission can be of help to you or a loved one in any way. Our doors are always open and our contact details are on the screen now. Today we're reflecting on the pioneering work of one of my predecessors, one of my heroes here at Wesley Mission, Rev Alan Walker. He was a missionary, a visionary, a prophet and a pioneer in so many ways. He stood and fought for social issues which he believed in. He was an advocate for people who could not speak for themselves. And he was an ambassador for the Christian faith. In the early 1990s, the then superintendent of Wesley Mission, Gordon Moyes, interviewed Alan Walker in what was known as the definitive interview. Let's take a look.
Sir Alan Walker, you for 20 years headed up the very important work of the Central Methodist Mission. How did you come to be called to that work?
Well, from the visit to England in 1938, I had believed that God's purpose for me was a central pulpit, and I hoped someday that would come about. And then I went to Mission to America, and the Mission to the Nation folded, and I wondered what to do. I was asked to the First Methodist Church in Los Angeles, had temptations to stay abroad, but felt I must be in Australia. And then Dr. Raywood unexpectedly retired before I got back, and it was thought that I would probably be appointed. But I wasn't, because there was opposition in the board of the Central Methodist Mission, especially led by a politician, the Honourable Richard Thompson, who said that I was a pacifist, a socialist and an internationalist. And so the opposition group was enough to stop the invitation being given. But the two treasurers, Mr. Simons and Mr. Tebbett, were determined that I would get the invitation, so they were able not to get it through there but to pass it over to conference. So when conference came, on the first reading of stations, as it used to be, my name was placed beside the mission and nobody ever challenged it. So that's how I got there, but under difficulty.
Dr. Raywood had had 20 very powerful years right through World War II and the difficult years of the 50s afterwards. You brought a different approach to ministry. In what way were you different from Dr. Raywood?
Well, the mission was very strong under Dr. Raywood. He had a great congregation, and however, it was fairly limited. We only had the Lyceum, and that was alienated by rental to the film industry for 6 days a week. And we only had the little social hall back above Wesley Chapel. There was no chance for real 7-day-a-week church that I dreamed about. So I immediately felt I had to develop in that area of community service. The mission, too, was very adequate in the wonderful things it did in meeting human needs, such as Lottie Stewart Hospital and Frank Vickery Village, but it didn't care for people in their homes where most people had to stay. And so I began to struggle, how can we care for people where they are and not just draw them out into isolated residential care. And so finally that issued in Lifeline, but in that whole area there was development. And then on the question of message, Dr. Raywood was a very attractive preacher and attracted great crowds, but he didn't have a social conscience. It was the private message of Jesus, and I felt always I had to preach both the private and the public truth of Jesus. And so I began to develop the social aspect of the gospel. He had the Pleasant Sunday Afternoon, which is an entertainment program. I turned it to the Lyceum platform and took up the great social and political international issues of the time and tried to present a Christian conscience on those issues. So that too was quite a transformation of the emphasis of the mission.
There were many great milestones in your 20 years at the mission. I guess one came when the telephone rang to tell you that the Lyceum was on fire.
Yes, that really was. You see, soon after I got there, to overcome the absence of community facilities, the old Epworth Press building of the Methodist Church, a block away, was up for sale, and I persuaded the executive to buy that. And I always remember the opposition of the board to buying it, but Sir Frederick Stewart was at the other end of the table, and halfway through the debate, which was going the wrong way, he sent a note up to me. He said, "I like this proposal, I'll give the first £1,000. So that swung it, and we bought Epworth House. And it proved good, but the separation of a block was difficult. So when the Lyceum fire came, that gave us the chance to rebuild and to put everything under the one roof and to get several floors of activity for midweek life in the mission and not just Sunday.
From the State Theatre in Market Street, representatives of 11 different denominations marched to the opening of Sydney's newest theatre, the Lyceum. Thousands crowd Pitt Street for the official opening, which is attended by the Reverend Alan Walker and the President of the New South Wales Methodist Conference, the Reverend S.M. Barrett. The Lord Mayor, Alderman Armstrong, is among distinguished guests at the opening. The Lyceum will be used for the pleasant Sunday afternoon meetings and evening worship of the Central Methodist Mission, and during the week by Greater Union Theatres for screening films. The official opening is performed by the State Governor, Sir Roden Cutler, VC. A magnificent new theatre in the heart of Sydney, dedicated as a place of worship and officially opened by the Governor.
I guess another crucial point came when you received a letter from someone telling you that he'd be dead by the time you read it.
That's right. I received it late one Saturday night from a fellow who gave his name only as Roy. He said, "I've just written you a letter. When you get it, I'll be dead." And so that night, on the Sunday night, in conversing with him, he said he was a failure. I said, "Look, I'm preaching at the Lyceum tomorrow night on life's glorious failures, it so happens. Will you please come and listen before you take your life?" So I stood up, then the phone clicked, and I thought, I've said the wrong thing. But when I stood up to preach, I mentioned this. "Is Roy here? Listen." 10 o'clock that night, the phone rang, and it was Roy. He now gave his name, Roy Brown. And so he said, "I was there tonight. I think I'll be right." I said, "I must see you." So we agreed to meet in my office at the mission at 2 o'clock on the Tuesday. At 5 to 2, I got a ring from the Darlington's police saying we found the body of a man, Roy Brown, with a letter on his chest in a gas-filled room at King's Cross. Do you know him? It's addressed to you, that letter. So we buried Roy Brown, a lonely 38-year-old Australian. The only people at the funeral were Wynne, my wife, and the undertaker and myself. But that really projected us into finding an answer to this lonely Sydney.
Lifeline was born when we discovered the power of the telephone.
How did Lifeline develop in those first couple of years?
Well, we launched a public appeal supported by the Lord Mayor at the time, and we had this old Methodist school in Darlinghurst, and we completely renovated, modernised it. That became the centre. And then on the 26th of March 1963 at 5 o'clock, we turned on the phones after the opening ceremony, and immediately the phone started to ring, and it's never stopped since, of course.
A new £40,000 Lifeline Centre is opened in Sydney by Lord Mayor Jensen. The centre, a project of the Methodist Central Mission, will maintain a 24 hours a day service to people who want help, and particularly people with emotional problems.
And soon, within a few months, other places became interested, particularly Auckland and Brisbane and Adelaide. And then a few months later, Time magazine heard about it and sent out a reporter who put a story in Time magazine which gave it international currency. So we forged a kit of materials to say how to set up Lifeline and sent it to people who wrote to us from all over the world, and so Lifeline was internationalised.
Throughout your ministry you have seen the building of many fine institutions, but I guess Vision Valley has one that's brought you a great deal of happiness.
I think we were a bit ahead of our time on all this environmental issues, and I felt the need for introducing people to the stillness and the loveliness, the beauty of nature. And more affluent people have their mountain cottages or seaside cottages. Poor people can't get away from the paved streets of inner Sydney and garish neon lights. And so I dreamed of a valley somewhere, or a property where they'd see the stars and where they'd hear the birds, where they'd see the loveliness of nature and meet God in nature. And so when we were able to obtain the Vision Valley property and then build it, it I think was a very valuable contribution to how city people can find a larger experience of God and His creation.
After 20 years at the Central Methodist Mission, the most powerful pulpit in the nation and the centre of a great deal of social action, what was the highlight of those 20 years?
I think the highlight was each year's Easter mission. I've always felt that every church must have at least one extensive outreach mission in evangelism a year. And so as soon as I came to the mission, I saw the potential of Easter, which was being so secularised. And so we started small. As soon as I came to the mission, with the first Easter mission, running from Palm Sunday to Easter Day. And then a year later we started the sunrise service, televised from the North Ryde Drive-In Theatre. We built up a tremendous series of gatherings. Often 20,000 people would attend those gatherings in that week. And we gained great attention, coverage. For example, I looked upon the Palm Sunday afternoon, the launching of the mission, as the most important address I would give in the year, trying to sum up the need of Australia at that time and the answer to it. And that address, for some number of years, was published the next morning, both in the Melbourne Age and the Sydney Morning Herald. And so that sort of gave it an outreach that I dreamed about. But I think the Easter mission, I rejoice, of course, that it continues, and that now, 30 years later, you still have the sunrise service at the mission and many features of that Easter mission.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode, reflecting on and celebrating the life and work of Sir Alan Walker and his service for 20 years as Superintendent of Wesley Mission. The team and I have enjoyed going through our archives and bringing to you this small part of our history. And I'd like to continue to do the same in the coming weeks. We're stepping into a new season at Wesley Mission, and our weekly television program will be changing. But before we do, we're looking back. Next week, we'll look at the ministry of Gordon Moyes, the superintendent of Wesley Mission from 1979 to 2005. Now, as always, if Wesley Mission can be of help to you or a loved one in any way, please don't hesitate to be in touch. Our doors are always open and we're always ready to lend a helping hand wherever we can. I hope you can join us again next week here on Wesley Impact. Every blessing to you and those who you love.
Wesley Mission walks alongside people of all ages struggling with homelessness, addictions, mental health issues and financial stress. To find out more, visit wesleymission.org.au.